Hey family, this is Pastor Jennifer, lead pastor here at Jackson Revival Center Church, and we are so excited that you have chosen to spend a moment with us today on Meet Me in the Break Room. We are so elated to have Judge Carlyn Hicks in the break room with us. Welcome to the break room.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We want to thank you for taking the time to stop by. And so I'll just start out today by asking you, tell us a little bit about Judge Carlyn Hicks, where you grew up, where you went to school. Just give us a little background information.
Well, interestingly, I grew up one block from your father's church.
Wow.
Awesome. I grew up on Silas Brown, and
Yes.
I remember my father and my mother were telling me stories about your father putting up a banner
Yes.
very early on, letting everybody in Jackson know that everybody was welcome.
Yes,
at
absolutely.
Jackson Revival Center. So I grew up in the Battlefield Park community.
Yes.
I'm a product of Jackson Public Schools. I went to Georgia Elementary,
Yes.
then Peoples, and then I graduated from Murrah High School. And then I got my bachelor's at Jackson State, and then I went to MC for my law degree and my master's.
Yes, very good. So all those places are near and dear to my heart, and you are proof that greatness comes from Jackson, Mississippi.
Absolutely. I'm very proud to be a product of Jackson, for sure.
Indeed, indeed. So tell me, what really compelled you to pursue a degree in law? What drew you there, and then tell us how you got to where you are now.
So I've always been a helper.
Mm-hmm.
I always, even in childhood, I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
It's just how I was raised. It was those values that were instilled in me as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And not just to help people, but help people who couldn't help themselves.
Right.
The least of these, those are the ones I wanted to help. And being a helper, I started talking about law school. So one of the things that I knew I wanted to do was be in a profession where I could continue to be a helper.
Right,
and
right.
to really make a difference. I started out doing small business and women-owned business development with the state immediately after college because I have a business background.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't enough for me.
Yeah.
It was one thing to help minority businesses. It was another thing to help women-owned businesses. But I wanted to do more, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does.
And so I talked to my husband, and he said, well, if you're going to go to law school, you need to go to law school now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I'll go later on. He said, no, you need to go now. He really encouraged me to go ahead and pursue law school.
And so at what age were you then?
Oh, gosh, this was in 2007 that I went to law school. 2007 I went to law school. I can't tell you because I can't do math that quickly.
That's okay. That's okay. Right.
But it was in 2007, and then graduated from law school in 2010. Passed the bar and went straight into working in public interest work. The bulk of my decade career was dedicated to representing the public, representing poor people, representing underrepresented and marginalized individuals. I did a lot of child welfare work. I did a lot of family representation work. And then as my career developed, I found this area of the law that really touched on the most vulnerable population. And so then that helper in me expanded even more. Take it to the next level. Not just opening doors for people who can't afford legal representation, but trying to put a stamp on or have an impact on the next generation. And with that, I really dove into children's law, child welfare, juvenile justice matters. And from that, I started doing court improvement work across the state with other judges in other jurisdictions. I've done it outside of the state, across the country. I've done training. I have represented children and families for the bulk of my legal career. And the opportunity came about upon the retirement of Judge Priester.
Absolutely.
And I received an appointment by the Chief Justice of the Mississippi Supreme Court that was later confirmed by the governor. And I've been there since July of last year. So we're coming up on a year now that I've been there. It has been probably my most challenging assignment yet in my career.
Sure.
Yet it has been one that I am privileged to have been able and be ready from day one to jump right in and get started. And Hinds County is the largest county by volume. We have the highest number of, one of the highest number of investigations on a monthly basis. but I'm proud to say we don't have the highest number of children in custody anymore.
Great.
When I got on the bench, that was the case. We had a foster care crisis in Hinds County. We immediately started looking at how things had been done in Hinds County, what the culture looked like, and reviewing those cases to see, where in our system we had breakdowns.
Right.
And my approach to any work I do is to be solution-based and results-oriented.
Absolutely.
I don't like to be reactive. I want to be responsive to needs. And so we really started pulling together teams, and where we saw their gaps were in existence, we started to work towards either closing those gaps or identifying some bridges to get us from one thing to the other. We work closely with a lot of community partners to make that happen. Recently, I put a call out to pastors.
Yes.
And not to leave anybody out, because I'm going to knock on your door soon.
Sure.
Too.
Yes.
But we were focusing on those pastors in those communities where we have high rates of maltreatment. And we were looking at data to really zero it down, even down to intersections of where these neighborhoods were. And so we put a call out to those pastors to help us create a network of faith-based first response teams across Hinds County to help, because I think that the church is uniquely situated to be the first response for families in crisis, to be the foundational support for communities and neighborhoods, and it should be. And so I see the church as its role in the work that we can do together, being that of intervention and that of prevention for further maltreatment. And so that's something that we've been looking at here recently and plugging into.
So what are some of the things that the faith-based community could do to be more involved and to be a part of the solution?
Well, let me first say Jackson Revival Center has been an incredible partner to Hinds Department of Child Protection Services, and by way of doing the work that you all do with them, that helps the court as well, because the services that you all provide, the donations that you all provide directly to those children and families, you make Christmas happen for children. And it was amazing to see when we start out with a number of children in the 200s and 300s, and then I get a call that Jackson Revival Center has taken a bulk of those children to make Christmas happen for them. Whether you realize it or not, you're already doing a great deal of that work.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Children, whether they're in foster care or in their homes of origin, they're still children.
Absolutely.
And they deserve, no matter what their circumstances are, they deserve to be children.
Right.
And so if they are outside of their home of origin during a holiday, it is critical that we try to maintain some sense of normalcy for them. Just because they're in foster care doesn't mean that they don't deserve.
That's right. And for them, for those who are in foster care, to understand we're not going to drop you as a community, that we're going to surround you and make sure you have what you need, and make sure they know they're known, they're loved, they're cared for.
That's it. And somebody's thinking about them.
Absolutely.
But even beyond that, the church can also really serve as an intervention and prevention mechanism. We see so many families who, but for a connection to a support system or but for a connection to resources, they would not have come before the youth court. If there was somebody to come in and help them with that weak floor, or help them with that mold infestation, or help them with the fact that they have 9 children and there's not enough food coming into the house. The church has a place in that work. That's right. There are contractors, there are retired teachers and retired educators and administrators, there are retired coaches. There are so many people who could be incredible resources, who sit in our congregations every Sunday.
Something as simple as building a wheelchair ramp for somebody's home.
That's it. It could be that. It could be a wide range of things. And one thing we have to realize, and something that I've learned, is sometimes our families, they don't know how to ask for help. And we have to really bridge a communication there between the church and other organizations, community-based organizations, and the nucleus of those neighborhoods to really touch those individuals and provide them with the support that they need. If I see churches who have community centers and youth centers, open them up.
Right,
to the
absolutely.
children. Open them up
Yeah.
to the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Open them up so that these children can have a safe place to go.
Right.
If you have pantries,
Mm-hmm.
open them up, or
Right.
consider making child protection services a priority for benevolence and those types of things. We have housing issues. In fact, we had a parent today reach out through the agency. She's been looking for housing. She's facing eviction, and she's got 6 children.
Wow.
And so that's quite stressful for her.
It is. Yeah.
Before we have a case where I have to consider placing her children in foster care because she's homeless and has nowhere to live, we're going to first try to connect her with some organization or some church who can assist her with the first month's rent and the deposit.
Right.
She has a short window of opportunity in order to get that done. And so that's just an example
Right.
of some of the ways that the church can really step in and step up. And there are some churches who are doing that.
Absolutely.
But we have a lot of churches.
Right, we do.
Almost every corner.
And I think sometimes what keeps people from getting involved is they look at the magnitude of the issues and they say, well, we can't do all that.
Right.
And one of the things I've tried to put out there is that no one church can do it all. But if every church does what they can, it would make a tremendous impact. And it would make the load so much lighter.
It doesn't matter if your congregation is 25 individuals.
That's right.
There's one person in that congregation who can do something.
Yeah.
And that one something, we're not talking about needing to impact, 300 children.
Right.
If you impact one child, that's shifting the trajectory for that child.
It sure is.
And I will tell you how impactful that is. The children we see who graduate to criminal behavior and are ultimately charged as adults or find themselves as adults in the criminal justice system, majority of them had a CPS history.
Yes, yes.
Majority of those are crossover youth. And they then become parents, and then their children become what we call legacy children.
Yes.
Because then they find themselves back before the youth court as well.
Right.
If there can be an intervention for one child, you may single-handedly impact an entire generation.
That's right.
And so we can't think in terms of how many kids we can help. If it's just one,
that's right.
That's what matters.
That's
because
right.
Every one child is important. Their future is important, and the work that we do now makes a difference from the point that they come through those courtroom doors,
right,
and even when they walk out of those doors too.
So, as a judge who has, I'm sure, thousands of families in the course of a year. You might not have last year because of the pandemic, but I know that there are hundreds and probably sometimes thousands of families who come through that court in the course of a year or two. How do you keep from taking each one of those families home with you?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Pastor. I joke with my husband and I say, I just need to build me something behind my house.
Right.
Just bring all the kids home with me. But, it's one of those things. I want to be clear about the uniqueness of youth court judge. Yes. You are on call 24/7. Okay. I work every day, all day, basically. Right. Because you cannot predict when a family is in crisis. Right. You cannot predict when a child is in harm or is being maltreated or is maltreated or abused. Those things you can't predict. Right. And so I don't have the privilege of a 9 to 5. I don't have the privilege of an 8 to 11. You're preaching to the choir. I have to, we have to respond. We are the first response, and we run into the burning house. Right. And sometimes we use a fire hydrant that doesn't have a hose. That's right. And that's kind of what I walked into when I got on the bench. But one of the things that keeps it in perspective for me, because you have to really engage in self-care and ensure that you don't find yourself in compassion fatigue or burnout, is to keep everything in perspective. No one person can single-handedly do anything alone. We are a system. The youth court is a youth court system. The uniqueness about it is we rely on community resources. We rely on service providers. We rely on the faith-based community. We rely on the education system. We rely on the medical system, the mental health system. So many systems make up the youth court system. And so we are able to do the work as a team. So I don't feel as though all of it is weighted on me. Now, I always check on my folks. Sure. I'm not one of those judges. I have to come off the bench, as they say. I come off the bench. I check with our folks. I get into the community. engage with stakeholders so that we can make sure that we're doing the best thing we can to serve the families we serve. But, so far, I'm a young lady. Mm-hmm. I've got youthful vigor.
Right.
I got a couple of extra grades, but other than that, the good thing is the work itself is enough to fuel me every day.
What would you say has been one of the biggest surprises about the position that you are now in that maybe someone from the outside looking in may miss?
Biggest surprise. I wouldn't call it a surprise. It's more of an adjustment.
Yeah.
When you've spent a decade as an advocate, and then you have to transition into a role where you have to be impartial. You can't speak out publicly about things.
Right.
And we're in an environment in our nation where this is a time unlike any other.
Right. Absolutely.
Across the country, things are happening in the criminal justice system, in the civil justice system, social justice matters, things in the church are happening. Yes. And to be on the bench during this time has been something that has really tempered me. Right. Because I would be one of those who would be speaking up and speaking out for those who can't speak for themselves. And that was something that drove my practice.
Right.
Now Micah 6:8 drives what I do on the bench when I walk out of the chambers.
Yes.
So I just had to shift my perspective a little bit. And that probably has been, I won't say it's difficult or a surprise, it's just been the biggest adjustment. It's going from advocate to arbiter of justice.
Yes. So what are some of the things that you are hoping to achieve as you serve? Maybe some long-term goals, or what are some of those things that you say, if I can accomplish this, and this, I'll know I have.
That's a loaded question. So in a perfect world, if I could just pick or choose, we would have a system, a child welfare system and a juvenile justice system that is holistic and completely responsive, that is intervention-based and solution-based, and does not cause more trauma to children and families than they already exist. If I could pull go pie in the sky, our system would be a system where families do not fear engagement with the agency, but they would go to the agency when they need help. Our system would be a system where young people and their families who are at risk because of delinquent behaviors would have a place to retreat to for resources. The youth court is designed to be a remedial court. It is the one court system that is unlike any other court system in our state. And the entire job of the youth court judge and the counselors and others who wrap around and provide services is to help find remedies to address the underlying issues. And with that, if we could become a court where we don't see children unless they've been abused or neglected. When we stop seeing cases because of poverty influence, then I would say that we're doing our job. Now, one thing I can tell you, and I'm sure the agency would also tell you, is that I hold them accountable to ensure that they follow their policies and their procedures. And as best I can, I ensure that people are not punished because of their poverty level. And that their children are not separated from them because of economics. That to me is a service issue or a resource issue.
Definitely.
And we need to do a better job of being the village in that instance. And not inviting the court to potentially separate that family. Because that is the most traumatic thing that a child can go through. Now, on the delinquency side, one of the frustrations that I see with our parents, and I wish the court system could do more, and we've been trying to be innovative, and I'll share some things that we've done. When we have children who have significant mental health needs, but we don't have mental health services to meet their needs, the youth court becomes a mental health triage of sorts for our young people on the delinquency side. The behavior we see, whether we see it in school or in church or in the neighborhoods, the delinquent behavior or that child who needs some additional supervision, that behavior is communication. That child is saying, hey, there is something wrong here. Either I want attention,
right,
or there's a breakdown, or I don't know how to identify these emotions and navigate them because it's too complex and my brain is not yet developed to process it yet.
right.
If we had a system in place that was completely and wholly responsive to that, where we had resources to really address those concerns, that would be pie in the sky. I've made it. We've done our job.
Right, right.
But we haven't done our job
until
every child in Hinds County is safe. Every child in Hinds County has the appropriate level of child well-being and opportunity to thrive and to flourish. And the reality is unfortunately, we will never be able to eradicate child abuse.
Right, right.
But our responses to it can be informed, and we can do the best to ensure that we don't cause further harm. We can also do our jobs to ensure that our system is not lagging behind and causing additional harm to the children and families that we serve.
Hey family, listen, this is Pastor Jennifer, and this interview with Judge Carlyn Hicks has been absolutely phenomenal. It's been so amazing. We're coming back with part 2. We couldn't share everything we wanted to share, but she had so many great things to say. We're going to invite you to meet us back next week, same time, same place, for part 2 of our interview with Judge Carlyn Hicks. I'm looking for you to meet me in the break room.